This is a classic. This game has always been sitting in the back of my mind in the memories of Walmart and mall game kiosks that I'd stand around playing until my parents would have to drag me away. No, Mom, I'm not ready to go. Venom's licking me sensually. Oh, yeah. What? Released in 2000, it was heavily inspired from the 1994 Spider-Man cartoon and a spin-off called Spider-Man Unlimited, including a few voice actors reprising their roles in the Spider-Man video game here. It's the first Spider-Man game that I'm reviewing with no influence from the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man series. Yet, because I watched the old Spider-Man cartoon religiously as a kid, I still have a lot of nostalgia, if not more, for this game, so I'm probably going to be extremely biased towards it even in its failings, but this is my video and I don't care. Made by Neversoft, those dudes who made Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on the PS1, who reused the Pro Skater's game engine, which itself was a modified engine from the game Apocalypse Neversoft released in 1998. Fun little fact, Neversoft had sprinkled bits of Tony Hawk gameplay and posters in cutscenes in a few of the billboards throughout the Spider-Man game. This game emulated on PC looks so good. I'm not sure how the PC game fares today, as I imagine it's kinda hard to get properly started on modern systems without a degree in computer science, so I went with PS1 emulation, which still ends up looking pretty damn good. No, this is not how the original game looked in any way. Without these enhancements, the game looks like Monet rendered it frame by frame. Here's the closest I can get to the PS1 graphics on emulation, and although I do love its jagged fuzziness, for the sake of clarity, I spruced it up to a 2K resolution and activated a few settings to help fix the typography of the 3D models from constantly breaking. The geometry still shifts like everything in the game is a living creature, but without large gaps. With the clearer picture, it's possible to see the fantastic job done on the game's models. Spidey is perfect, except for the missing web lines on his base costume, but that's an understandable detail to leave out on the limited PS1 system at the time. Although, some of the other versions of the game on different consoles have the lines on Spidey, but hey, I'm not playing those. Every unlockable costume is a near perfect rendition of the '94 cartoon or the comics. My personal favorite was Ben Reilly's suit, that's only missing the hood. Spidey's symbiote suit is excellent in-game since its design was simple to begin with, being almost entirely black except for the eyes and the spider logo. Spider-Man's 2099 costume looks just as cool as it does in the cartoon, and Spidey's cosmic chrome cheeks is something to behold.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Human faces are even worse than vultures from the PSP game. The thugs look like my sleep paralysis demon, and Black Cat has this deep, vacant stare that peers right into my soul. But Venom, Carnage, the lizards, and the symbiotes are great designs. Monster Ock looks like he was partially melted from a vat of acid, and I love it. It feels like a What If comic, or when Carnage fused to the Green Goblin, creating the Red Goblin. The levels look very basic, but still left an impact on my memory from all those years ago, and don't disappoint the rose-colored glasses I have for this game. The sewer levels are probably my favorite because of this almost mythic quality to them. Huge, sprawling, underground complexes containing monsters. One thing you may have noticed is the strange frame rate. It's either sped up beyond belief, or it looks like it's slogging, and it's both actually. Emulation is a tough process, and it's hard to get right for every single game. I couldn't get the game to run at 60 frames a second, even with no enhancements added from the emulation. So I sped up the entire game, which increased the frame rate much higher, peaking around 55, but usually hanging around 30, but at least it wasn't giving me a headache anymore. The music, voice work, and sound effects were all on point. The music and sound effects are credited to the Tommy Tallarico Company, which was founded by the man of the same name, Tommy Tallarico. I'm not going to get into the alleged mountain of lies Tommy has told over his lifetime, but H. Bomber Guy has a 2-hour video on the subject, so if you want to know more, I'd suggest giving his video a try.
Maybe I'm just a gaming racist, but is it okay at this point to call this an obvious lie?
I bring this up as I'm not totally sure Tommy wouldn't copyright strike the video for using his songs, so sadly I can't share them, but I'd suggest going to give them a listen as they were very fun tunes all the way through the game. It's also important to note the game's credits actually has 2 people credited for the music, Tommy and Howard Ulate, Latte? I don't know. Sorry Howard, I don't mean to butcher your name. Much respect. Voice work is probably the best part of this game, having a stellar cast of voice artists to bring this game to life. Spider-Man is voiced by Rino Romano, who was the Spidey voice in Spider-Man Unlimited, and he was also the voice of Batman in the Batman cartoon of 2004. Mary Jane and Black Cat are voiced by Jennifer Hale, who also voiced Black Cat from the '94 Spider-Man cartoon and Mary Jane from the Spider-Man Unlimited series. Jennifer has a wide range of work across the gaming and TV world. Some of the more famous works include Metroid Prime as Samus, Galadriel from Shadow of War, Mazzy Fenton from Baldur's Gate 2, Bastila Shan from Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and the female voice of Shepard from the Mass Effect series. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. comes in to reprise his role as Doc Ock from the '94 cartoon, who was also Alfred Pennyworth from the animated Batman series of '92. Dean Norris voices multiple characters which include Venom, Mysterio, Scorpion, Punisher, the Human Torch, and Captain America. Dean's Venom banter is some of my favorite of all time, and I think he would do a great job in an animated series as Venom.
Where'd Spider-Wuss go? Spider-Wuss! Come out and play! You and your wife are innocent, Parker. Our bad.
Our bad? Our bad?
Jeez, one little mistake. We said we're sorry.
D. Bradley Baker voices Carnage, J. Jonah Jameson, Daredevil, and Rhino, who some of you may know as the Gravemind from Halo 2 and 3. Stanley narrates random portions of the game, and it honestly makes me miss the man so much. You can hear the sincerity Stanley speaks with as he narrates the game.
Welcome, true believers and newcomers alike. Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee here. Once again, we find our hero Peter Parker, better known around the world as the Amazing Spider-Man, in a heap of trouble. But this is just the beginning, Spidey fans. So get ready for a true superhero action thriller, packed to the brim with thrills and chills, twists and turns, more supervillains than you can shake a web at, and of course, non-stop web-slinging, wall-crawling action.
You know, I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
What a gem of a game, truly. I've played through it a good 10 times now, and still, I want to replay it. It's simpler than the later games it inspired in many ways, yet somehow feels more open and free. Every level does its best to have a unique mission, ranging from catching Venom in a game of tag to running away from the NYPD attack helicopter that decimates the poor parts of New York, but hey, what's new here? It's an action-adventure game. Beat up the bad guys, solve a few puzzles, and save the damsel in distress from being drowned in raw sewage. At least it's not radioactive spider loads in this timeline. The fighting is surprisingly fun. Basic, but hey, I suck at video games, so basic is ideal. Punch combos, kick combos, and different web abilities are all at your disposal like any good Spidey game should have. The web abilities are the spider balls, web yank, web shield, web fists, and your basic tie-up. You have a limited amount of Peter fluid, so none of the web abilities are overpowered, but you also never feel like you're completely out, with your fluid recharging over time and finding web cartridges scattered around the levels. Enemies can feel a bit generic, since the only difference really are looks, health, and a few resistances like not being able to tie up the lizard men or symbiotes, but that's a minor complaint if one at all. I will say that the symbiotes felt like they had a tad too much health, as it was only on my third playthrough playing as Chrome Cheeks, doing double damage and being invincible, that I killed one without the fire web upgrade. Yet, I also enjoy this since the symbiotes are famously supposed to be extremely tough, only heavily vulnerable to heat and sound, which the game devs incorporate into the game with the flame webs, as well as the sound bubble later when taking on Carnage. Bosses all felt like a wave of fresh air. Finally, some creativity in how to defeat the bosses instead of straight up death matches. Yes, beating each boss basically means you bludgeon them into submission, but it's still much more than the other Spidey games I've reviewed so far have done. Venom was a game of hide and seek, since he ignores Spider-Man's Peter tingle while also having the ability to become invisible, since the symbiote can camouflage by changing its colors to blend into its surroundings. I didn't know at first that you could push Carnage into the sonic bubble with a punch combo until it happened by accident. A later playthrough, I started tying Carnage up in the sonic bubble so he would be stunned when the bubble turns back on. Mysterio had you breaking bits of his giant body, Rhino could be led into these electric thingies that stun and damage him for a moment. Even Scorpion, who's a fairly basic boss, added J. Jonah Jameson hiding around the office while Scorpion searches for him. He will eventually ignore you if you just let him murder Jameson.
No! You're fired.
Doc Ock was the least creative out of the bunch, where you had to press a bunch of buttons to shut off his shield to go beat up an old German man who may have dementia. The unlockable costumes can also change up the gameplay a bit, but that depends if they have powers or not. Spidey's symbiote suit has unlimited Peter fluid, which makes the web abilities broken. Your fight with Scorpion is just slapping the dude in the face with your spider balls. Carnage can be stun locked in the sonic bubble until he's dead. This suit also makes the subway level a breeze, as the web shield easily knocks the lizardmen off the train. Chrome Cheeks here is invulnerable to all damage except for instant death locations like getting jammed into a paper press. Otherwise, you can pass levels like the subway by simply standing still until the timer runs out, or walking out onto an electrified floor like it's nothing. Spider-Man's unlimited suit allows the wall crawler to go invisible, which makes it so basic enemies can't see you. Even if you beat the living snot out of them, they just stand around and forget that a superhuman force just struck them. The pig's helicopter and the bosses will still see you, but otherwise you get 100% stealth capabilities. It really only makes the enemies docile, so I can't say there's a whole lot of extra fun added while using the unlimited costume, but it's cool they had it in the game. If you want a bit of added challenge, you can suit up into Peter's regular clothes, or a quick change version of Peter, as well as the bombastic Bagman. The suits limit your Peter fluid to only 2 cartridges, which can really change up the difficulty of bosses, as I've been generally very dependent on these abilities. Swigging had its ups and downs. At first, I thought it kinda sucked, even for a game of the PS1 era, but after a few playthroughs, it started to grow on me. You've got to aim your swigging path to another building or platform, and if nothing is in sight, or it's outside of your reach, you're gonna plummet to your death in dramatic style. You can stop and change direction mid-swing, but you don't have control of the path after you've taken off. Being damaged stops the swinging, so careful while doing a speed run. You're able to hold L1 to open up a reticle and choose where to swing, but you've got to be level with what you wish to swing to for the cursor to light up green. There's also Spidey's classic web zip lines to quickly jump around the levels, which can also be aimed with the L1 reticle. There are 3 main levels when swinging takes priority. Being chased by the police and chasing down Venom are pretty fun once you've gotten the slightly wonking swinging mechanics, but the last level is on a whole other level. You know how Halo 1 had an epic conclusion of escaping a Halo ring as it self-destructs underneath the wheels of your Warthog? That's how Spidey's last level feels as you race against Monster Ock to escape. Sure, it's not as pretty as Halo, but oh my frack, does this level get my heart pumping. Before this section is over, I'm gonna talk a bit more on the frame rate change I used for most of my playthroughs. Emulation was sped up by 175% to reach what felt like a comfortable frame rate, which also sped up the game and thus flipped my opinion of the game, as it was originally a pain to play, giving me a major migraine from the choppy ass frame rate. So, unless the original PS1 plays it any smoother, I couldn't say I'd recommend the game without emulation. The story feels like a few of the episodes of the '94 cartoon mashed together to create a fun but unknown adventure that carries a certain charm to it that most of the other Spidey games I've played so far are lacking. No, it's nothing deep, and it also makes little to no sense. I have no idea why the police were so ready to raise half of New York because Spidey stole an unknown device from a known supervillain who has tried to destroy New York on multiple occasions. The machine the doppelganger Spider-Man stole was never resolved from my memory, so the police should still think Spidey's a thief and are probably arriving soon to erase his entire neighborhood. Why did they kidnap Black Cat? If it was to put a symbiote on her, why is she found just sitting in a test chamber? But the point is, it's fun, and something a little more original than just making poor copies of a film's story for the sake of a quick cash grab. Doc Ock is reformed and trying to use his intellect for the good of mankind.
Intelligence is not a privilege, it's a gift. And you use it for the good of mankind.
But really, this is all a ploy for the Doc to enslave mankind to the symbiote offspring of Carnage, who, I must remind you, is out of his absolute mind after binding to a fracking serial killer, making the symbiote's mind demented and violent. I'd be surprised, but you Germans have been known to dabble in experimental human rights violations. Every character to me was perfectly portrayed and acted out, with the best being Venom by far, with his sarcastic, jester-like nature when antagonizing Spider-Man. I'm sure I'm not the only one who enjoyed being licked by Venom as a young man. Since the game isn't recreating a movie or an existing Spider-Man story, I'm going to go ahead and quickly give you all the rundown of the main story beats. I doubt anyone considers anything I'm about to say spoilers, since the game is more than 20 years old now, but if you want to experience the full story without any more spoilers, skip to the next chapter. Get ready, because my ADHD is going to take the wheel here. So, our story begins with Peter, this beautiful mess of pixels, who is attending a science expo watching Otto practicing his German accent while Eddie is snapping photos for Jameson, I think. Eddie might be a little mentally unstable from having a symbiotic organism that eats brains attached to him. A doppelganger of Spidey shows up to steal a thing. Eddie nearly gets a few snapshots of the webhead, but the doppelganger smashes Eddie's camera.
See you, chump. What the hell?
Venom comes out. Doc Ock and Carnage begin their plan and emit a green gas across New York that I can only imagine decimates the young and old. Black Cat descends from the sky, somewhere, letting us know the bank's being robbed, and disappears as mysteriously as she appeared. I decide to break in myself to help pay the rent, since I'm already a wanted criminal for stealing an unnamed science thing, while I rescue civilians. Most of them. finally, bankrupting the bank by blowing their gold to smithereens. JJ calls Peter to tell us to phone the police, which, can't you do that yourself, pal?
Shut up and dial 911!
We arrive just in time to watch JJ be murdered by Scorpion.
No!
The pigs pin it on us, and we are chased down by a heavy attack helicopter. Spidey decides to let loose on the scattered New York pigs, since it looks like they're already trying to execute him. After the pigs destroy enough public property and biffs their own helicopter, our webhead starts flirting with Black Cat.
Sticking you to that wall.
Well, it's not the most romantic proposition I've ever had.
Venom is threatening Spidey on a jumbo screen with Mary Jane's life because he stole a random science thing and broke his camera. I love you, Venom, but this is a little overboard like the pigs in blue. I expect better from a liquid alien-human monster hybrid. We go to find Rhino first, cause responsibility?
With great power. Come.
Black Cat gets yeeted, and we quickly beat the piss out of Rhino before seeing Otto take away Rhino. Peter watches Black Cat get kidnapped by the oldest humans in existence. Venom shows up, and they're immediately having a lover's quarrel.
Parker hates it when I get the drop on it.
I hate it when he gets the drop on me.
After Venom sings us a few songs and grooms us a bit, we follow him into the sewers to go meet some of his lizard pals who like chilling on top of moving subway trains. Venom and Spidey make up and take Mary Jane's choking fetish and coprophilia to the extreme by drowning her in raw sewage. Hey, I'm not here to judge, I just feel there are safer ways to do this, guys. I also found out quickly that not only can Spider-Man not swim, but the mere act of touching a single water molecule will suck Spidey into the Great Abyss. Symbiotes have begun an invasion across the city after Venom just bounces. We ride the elevator down into the Daily Bugle's basement to find that Doc Ock has rigged up machines to replicate offspring from Carnage faster, and so we destroy these Lovecraftian makers in the basement and in the Daily Bugle's medieval-looking furnace room? Well, after that we have a 60s Spider-Man meme moment when we run into our doppelganger. We find out that it's the weirdo Mysterio. Spidey is just as annoyed as I am with this failed theater kid and bullies him to find out a bit of information. We reject the Punisher's help because we don't want an unnecessary body count, but as it turns out, the warehouse is filled with symbiotes, so really, we could have used his help. We make our way down further into the underwater complex where the green gas is made and Black Cat is being held. Not sure why she's here really, but we close the vents of the green gas, which breaks Black Cat out. We meet and beat Ock by pressing a few buttons and giving him a good old whooping. We tie Carnage up in the sonic bubble and watch the putrid creature melt away in pain before our eyes. But we end up getting the much more terrifying creature known as Monster Ock, and I really try not to imagine the Rule 34 art that probably exists of this. After an epic sequence of escaping a collapsing underwater facility and getting a lovely ending of the Punisher, Daredevil, Captain America, and Spider-Man playing Go Fish. The Human Torch and Black Cat are dancing in the back. We get to see the villains all held up in prison playing Go Fish as well.
I got a bingo!
After all that, we get an end title with some question marks. I wonder if that means it has a sequel. I had a lot of fun with the game, in case you couldn't tell. It lived up to the nostalgia I had, unlike a previous Spider-Man title I've reviewed. It was one of those games I played in the Walmart electronics section and had only ever played the first few levels, and so feels like a deep mystery I've finally unlocked in my adult years. I hope anyone else who had a similar experience could find what they couldn't get years ago, whether that be because you don't own a console to play it on, or, like a friend of mine, you don't have a memory card. Also, does anyone know what Spidey's doppelganger stole? I'm still confused about that. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, it helps the channel immensely. But otherwise, have a good one until next time, you fungoids.